Inspiring interviews with today's top landlords. This is the Rental Income Podcast. And now, Dan Lane.
The real estate market is always shifting, and there's always opportunity in any market. You may just have to do things a little bit differently to take advantage of it. Kristina, I wanted to bring you on the podcast today because you've been really good at navigating all the changes we've seen over the last couple of years. Tell us what you've done.
Sure. So I believe in having to evolve your strategy, and what works one year or one season may not work well the next year or the next season. So my strategy is really about kind of trying to read the signs that come up along the way and pivot and evolve and change to make sure that we stay profitable and we stay relevant in the market that we have today and tomorrow.
Kristina found a type of property that worked for her, but then as the market changed, she couldn't find those deals anymore. So she was flexible. She changed the types of properties she was buying. She changed how she was looking for deals. And over the last 4 years, Kristina has built a portfolio of 22 rentals and brings in about $30,000 a month in rental income. On the podcast today, we're going to take a look at all of Kristina's numbers. We'll take a look at one of her deals and figure out how she's finding properties today. Joining us on the show from Loudoun County, Virginia, is Kristina Adams. We'll take a really quick break to thank our sponsors. We'll come right back and we'll talk to Kristina. It's a lot of work to find a really good rental property. And when you actually find that property, you want to make sure you're working with a lender that can get that loan closed. The lender that I recommend is Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. She's a nationwide lender, and her specialty is helping investors finance rental properties. She has a ton of loan programs, and she can find something customized to you for your situation. If you want to find out more or you're ready to get started today, just go to ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE lendinggroup.com, NMLS 42056. Mention Rental Income Podcast, and Chaley will credit you back $250 at closing. Offer valid for a limited time.
Rental Income Podcast.
Kristina, I think you make a real interesting point about evolving as the market changes and as you come across different opportunities. And I think a lot of people get stuck that they find a strategy that works for them, and then the market changes and they just end up not doing anything.
Yeah. I try not to get stuck there. I feel that way sometimes. So I definitely always am trying something new. If what worked yesterday isn't working today, the biggest thing is to take action, I think, and experiment a little and see what will work and be your strategy going forward until that doesn't work anymore.
I love it. All right. Well, let's talk about what you've done. So let's before we get into exactly what you've done, let's talk about your portfolio real quick. What does your portfolio look like?
Sure, Dan. So right now, my husband and I own, it's a total of 12 properties, and it comes out to 22 units. So it's a mix of single family residence and small multifamilies. We have mostly duplexes and a triplex.
All right. So let's talk about how that evolved as you were building things out. So you've only been investing for a couple of years, right?
Yeah, we started in 2019.
So let's talk about that. So in 2019, what did you end up buying?
In 2019, we bought 4 duplexes. So we started there in the duplex.
And how were you finding them back then?
On the MLS in 2019. Mm-hmm.
So you were working with a realtor and just finding properties. And then I guess 2020, the market changed. There was a shortage of inventory. Was it just tougher to find things on the MLS when 2020 came around?
Yeah. We were looking, I'm always trying to solve a problem, and that's part of the evolution. So you solve one problem and you find another and you solve that and you kind of change. So the problem we wanted to solve is we wanted to get better deals. We wanted to get, cheaper houses and rentals to buy. So we joined a RIA, a Real Estate Investment Association or group, a meetup, and met other investors, and we met wholesalers. And so in 2020, we bought I think almost all from wholesalers that year and going forward.
And were you getting better deals from the wholesalers than the properties you were buying off the MLS the year before?
Yes, but the interesting thing here, Dan, is that that's not the case anymore. It changed again.
Wow.
Lately, I've been seeing the better deals on the MLS, and the wholesaler deals haven't had the meat on them. But for a couple years in there, 2020, 2021, it was better to buy from the wholesalers in my experience and in my
That's
market.
interesting. Why do you think it is that you're finding better deals now on the MLS?
I think, it's not in every market, but I think in some markets with the interest rates being higher, and more inventory coming, they're not, it's, in some markets, it's still a seller's market, but it's not everywhere. It's starting to turn. And so you can look for those places that have been on the market. The days on market is growing, and people get a certain sense of desperation, and they really want to sell if it's over 30 days on market, in some areas, even higher. So that's where you can find deals right now.
All right. So 2019, you found deals on the MLS. 2020, the wholesalers were where you were finding action. And then what happened after that?
So we kind of rode that wave. To be honest with you, we got a little bit more picky in our criteria because in our market, we don't have a lot of good contractors. I think that's probably everybody would tell you that, every real estate investor.
Sure.
So for us, we have this backlog of projects. And so unless it was a really, really good deal, we weren't buying anymore, and we were focusing our energy on rehab and getting our properties that we bought at really good deals the year before, getting those ready to put on the market for rentals.
Okay, so you just remain flexible and getting things going. So with the rehabs, do you have properties that are sitting vacant right now, or are these properties that you need to improve to make them better?
Yeah. So of my portfolio of 22 units, 12 are currently rented and 10 are vacant. Now, 2 are just recent turnovers, so they'll be rented pretty shortly after the turnover. Another unit, we just did the final walkthrough with the contractor, but the interior is ready. The exterior needs a little bit more work. And then there's 3 more units that are very close. And then, others just in different states. There's a couple we haven't started, we haven't touched yet. So yeah, we've got a lot of projects.
Yeah. Does that drive you crazy having 10 properties sitting there?
It doesn't, because we always bought them right. I don't have properties that are worth a lot of money or that I have a huge mortgage on. Most of them was, money that we borrowed from ourselves, from our HELOC, from our savings, or just paid cash because we got them really cheap because they need a lot of work. So they don't cost me much to sit there, for when I have time to work on them and I can find, somebody to do the work. So it doesn't bother me too much. I will feel better, sleep better when they are rented and producing income. But it doesn't kill me that they're not yet.
I think that's a good strategy, that it's not like your portfolio is relying on a couple of properties that's going to make or break you. I mean, you've got 22 income streams, and it seems like there's not 1 or 2 income streams that are making up the bulk of your revenue. Am I right in thinking that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I would also say that it allows us a certain flexibility because we're not capped at our current income. We have a lot more potential. So if the market goes to where properties are really expensive, I don't have to go out and buy an expensive property to add another revenue source. I just need to finish one that I already own.
Right.
So I don't have to, I don't have to get like scratch an itch to buy a new deal because I have new deals that I can get ready.
Yeah. Now part of your flexibility with taking the opportunities that are presented to you is that not all of your rentals are traditional long-term rentals. Tell us what else you're doing.
So that was definitely part of the evolution that I talked about a little bit earlier. So when we started going to that real estate meetup, that RIA group, I remember it was, I think it was summer of 2020 or 2021. And there was another couple there, and they were like, just like my husband and I, just a husband and wife, local in the area, both worked W-2 jobs, and just started real estate investing. And they were a little bit ahead of us, maybe 50% more properties than we had. And they talked about how they were getting like twice the rent we were getting on the same properties because they were doing it short-term rental. And they really had a niche with the insurance market. So if somebody's house got flooded or fire damaged or something, the insurance would pay for the family to live somewhere else while their house got repaired. And that could be 3, 6, 9, 12 months of pretty good income from an insurance company. So that was their niche, but that kind of really turned us on. And so we started going there. And I would say that the return on investment for us is about the same in terms of, dollars out for cost, but it's a different clientele and different experience. And we just kind of like that market better. So for those properties we're buying, that's where the single families come back into the mix. We're not doing that with our duplexes, although our friends, the other investors do, and we're thinking about it with ones coming up. But we're spending a little bit more to buy like a nicer property for the midterm rental market.
So how are you finding people? Are you doing the same strategy as the friends that you met at the meetup group? Like trying to find people that have their house being repaired for an insurance claim?
So I don't have necessarily the same in that they do in that niche. So I did have an insurance claim family in my house. They found me on Airbnb. And that kind of, I don't know, it kind of came with frustrations because they always wanted me to hold the property for them to extend, but they had to fight with the insurance company. And I wasn't too comfortable holding it. Like I would hold it for them for a month, but like as we got within a month of when their lease was up or their booking, I wasn't as comfortable holding it. And eventually I told them, hey, look, I've got to let this property back on the market at this point. And I was trying to get them to put pressure on the insurance company, but eventually they didn't book and somebody else did. So they had to leave and they booked, somewhere else, another property. But we've kind of found our own niche, and it's basically they found us. We just had our properties on Airbnb and on Vrbo, and we get a lot of business from like engineering companies or contractors or construction contractors, and they come in and there's usually a group of them in one of our single family houses, and they'll stay 3, 4, 5, 6 months. And so those are great tenants for us in our midterms.
And so how much extra rent are you getting? Say if this property was just a regular traditional rental versus going with midterm, how much extra money are you making every month?
Double. Easily
okay.
double.
Wow.
Yes.
So you've got extra expenses that you have to pay, utilities and so like when you take that into account, like that cuts it down a little bit, like it cuts down your profit a little bit, but it sounds like it's still pretty lucrative.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's take a look at your numbers and see how your portfolio is looking here. So I know you've got a lot of vacant units. Maybe we could start with how much actual rental income you're bringing in right now. So what's your total rental income right now?
Right now, it's normally 19,000 a month, but we're at 17 right now because we had 2 turnovers.
Okay.
So we should have it back to the 19 pretty shortly.
And then when everything is fully up and running, when you get those 10 rehabs done, how much rental income will you have at that point?
At that point, the total number should be about 30,000 monthly as revenue, top line.
Okay, so 30,000 revenue, and then for your expenses, so you've got mortgages on the property. So how much are your mortgage payments?
The total mortgage payments across all the loans comes out to like 8,000 to 8,500, somewhere in that range.
Okay. And then does that include taxes and insurance?
On a couple of them it does, but most of them that doesn't.
Okay. And how much are your taxes and insurance?
Across the portfolio, we're looking at between 11 and 12,000 a month.
Okay, 11. Okay, so you're at, call it like 20,000 a month.
Yeah.
Okay.
In expense.
Okay, so you've got about, or you will have about 10,000 a month in cash flow when everything's done before any kind of repairs and vacancy. How do you budget for that? How do you budget for your repairs and vacancy?
So for the most part, it doesn't sound like we have positive cash flow right now. And part of that is because we just in this past quarter made the biggest purchase that we've ever done outside of our primary. So we just bought this big beach house down in Virginia Beach. That's going to be a short-term rental. And so all of our expense numbers, the mortgage and the taxes and insurance include that, but that hasn't been a revenue generator for us yet.
Okay.
So it's a little bit different. I mean, it looks like we're losing money every month. And I guess since February 28, when we closed on that one, we are. So it's a little tricky, but normally we're cash flow positive. We don't spend the money. It goes into our business account. We've honestly never paid ourselves. We just kind of reinvest it back into the business. So the business is doing well. It's healthy. It's got money in the account. If it didn't, our safety net would be, some credit card. We open a credit card with a 0 interest for so many months. We do that when we furnish our Airbnbs. We get like a 0 interest credit card for 12 months or 18 months and pay it off as we get tenants in there. And our absolute safety net, if we needed it, is our home equity line of credit.
That's good. All right. So you've got some backups to help you if you have problems. Now, I know when you buy properties, you're doing a rehab on it. It sounds like you're buying properties that maybe aren't even in livable shape and fixing them up. So because of that, do you have many repairs on a monthly, ongoing basis?
We really don't. We don't have monthly repairs on our units. We get maybe quarterly.
Okay.
Sometimes a refrigerator or a toilet, maybe a maintenance call on a quarterly basis, I would say, with our portfolio.
Okay. And then say when a unit turns over, like on average, how much do you typically spend to turn a unit over? If maybe you have to do some touch-up paint or other little things, how much does that typically cost you?
So if it's a unit that I have rehabbed, and not me myself, but our people have rehabbed, almost nothing. Almost nothing. I mean, sometimes like a cleaning, usually it's within the security deposit. If it's a unit that I bought and it was occupied when I bought it and I'm turning it for the first time, then we're looking at probably, $6,000 to $10,000 depending on the unit.
Okay. Awesome. Well, let's take a look at one of your deals. Do you have a deal in mind that might be interesting to look at?
Yes.
Okay. So how did you find this property?
So this deal was the first property that we bought from a wholesaler that we met in our RIA group.
Okay. And so did they just kind of blast out that this is a deal we have, or did they contact you directly?
So at that point, we didn't have a reputation with them because it was the first deal. So it was just on the RIA group's website, and we saw it and thought it was a good opportunity. So we reached out.
Okay. And did you get to go inside the property?
We did not.
Okay.
We bought it sight unseen.
So was that scary to buy a property without really knowing what you're getting yourself into?
Probably not as scary as it could have been. I think by this time we'd bought a bunch, and it wasn't an old property, and it wasn't an expensive property. Okay. So it was a new build in the 2000s. So it's about 20 years old, and we got it for $165, and it was a 3-bed, 2-bath, single family, 2-car garage home.
Okay. And then so when you got in there, what was it like? I mean, did it need a ton of work?
No, it was pretty much as advertised. So the situation with that one is that the wholesaler got it under contract. The family that was living there had bought it new. They were not distressed. They were building a new house, and they wanted to sell their house and rent back and be sure that they could stay in the house until their new one was ready. And so that was why they didn't want to put it on the market. And it was kind of a little bit before it was a real seller's market. I think they could have done that on the MLS, but for whatever reason they didn't. Yeah. So we rented it back to them for a little bit. So it was even a few months that we owned it before we ever went inside.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And it wasn't bad at all. It needed new floors and paint, and they had a cat, and cats tend to pee sometimes and
Yep.
have that smell. And we couldn't get rid of it. We couldn't get rid of it. And we realized it was particularly bad in one of the kids' bedrooms. The cat had peed down the vent, like
Oh, no.
the HVAC vent. So we just had to replace the ductwork in the vent in that one bedroom,
Yeah.
that one area. And the smell went away. And it was a really nice house after
Okay.
that.
All right. And how much did everything cost? Like, what was your all-in price to get everything done?
It was about $20,000, a little deck repair, paint, carpet, and the ductwork.
Okay.
Around $20,000.
All right,
And
so
the $20,000 also actually includes furnishing for Airbnb. We put like $5,000-$6,000 into that.
Okay, so 165 to buy the house, 20 grand. You're all in rehab. So all in at 185. And what is that property rented out for today?
Today, it pretty consistently rents on Airbnb for $2,800 a month, and we just it's been 12 months. We just finished our first year into the 13th month on Airbnb, and it is almost 100. It's like 80 to 100% rented.
So just some gaps between tenants, but mainly that thing is consistently rented.
Yep.
That is great. So what's the goal? Like long term, what are you trying to do with your rental properties?
So we're just trying to build a base of more or less passive income. To be honest, I still don't necessarily know what I want to be when I grow up. I don't think most of our properties, like from the early days, like 2019, are those duplexes. They're kind of like C, D class, and they're a lot of headache that I've been afraid to put it out to property management because then, the margin won't be there, but they're more headache than I want to manage. So I think at some point I'd like to change the mix. We haven't sold any of our rentals yet, but at some point, I think when we're stabilized, when everything we have is rented and occupied, I'll probably do like an annual account rebalancing like you would do with your 401k and kind of like look at what's doing well and what's not and what's a headache, and probably start selling the properties that I don't want to keep anymore and then reinvesting into, I'm not sure if it'll be, single families, if it'll be in an area that I want to move to, like kind of in the direction of going toward a beach, or if it'll be in something different altogether, like a passive real estate deal, or, I'm sure it'll be in real estate, but I don't know if I'll stay in the same kind of niche that I'm in currently.
If anybody wants to reach out to Kristina, I've got a link to her social media and also a link to that local investor group that she mentioned a couple of times during the interview. You can find it all at rentalincomepodcast.com/episode 424. I'd like to thank Rent Savvy for sponsoring today's episode. Rent Savvy is the first and only nationwide placement service for filling your rental property with a quality tenant for one flat fee. You can get a free market analysis of your property right now. Just go to rentsavvy.co/RIP. That's rentsavvy.co/RIP. Thank you so much for checking out today's podcast. I'll be back with a new interview next Tuesday. My name is Dan Lane, and this has been the Rental Income Podcast.